Olódùmarè, ìbáṣe Ògúnmìlà, ìbáṣe àwọ̀ àkọ́dá, ìbáṣe àṣẹ̀dá, ìbáṣe èdùgbọ́nà mẹ́fà, ìbáṣe àgbóngbóng ọba ilé Ifẹ̀, ìbáṣe àdábàlótú Ifẹ̀, ìbáṣe olókun, ìbáṣe Olásà, ìbáṣe ajé Ògún Olóṣó Olàmbá ilé ayé, ìbáṣe ìta mẹ́rìndínlógún, ìbáṣe Orúnòkò, ìbáṣe Òkúnnòkò, ìbáṣe Òkìtì àwọ̀ òkò, ìbáṣe Ògún ìmàlẹ́ èdèdù, ìbáṣe bàbá, ìbáṣe yèyé, ìbáṣe orí, ìbáṣe tótótó, Olódùmarè ìmọ̀jùbà. Kíbá mi èṣì òrùnjùbà, àṣẹ, 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 àṣẹ.
But the true essence of magical or occult phenomenon is the creation of an ego, the creation of an identity, but an identity that will hold and maintain through lifetimes. The all in all is a spiritual and unseen subcontext that lies beneath all of reality. That is the all. And that within itself is mental. The greatest thing you can do in this moment is to be aware that these events are happening and to start digging into your creative mind as to where you can begin to assist. So these are not theories and thoughts and ideas that have been developed within me overnight, nor are they theories, thoughts, and ideas that have been developed inside of a vacuum, but they've been tried and proven real around the desert of the mind. Because your mind can only perceive what is real, but you have yet to actually fully. So if the universe is mental, then can the universe learn something? Certainly.
Greetings everyone, and welcome to another Foundational Friday. I am, of course, your conductor on this experience, Yuya Assaan-ANU, and as always, Chief Jegna of the ANU Spiritual Order and head instructor of the Sadulu House Spiritual Center. In this segment, I'm going to share with you a broadcast that I did earlier this strong on Goddess Radio. And I'm sharing it with you for a couple reasons. One, because I think it's one that you will enjoy, but also because the audio on that particular segment, on that day, on their network was hard to hear in some spots. So this is a remastered, cleaned up rendition of that interview that I did with those 5 women, or 5 goddesses as they prefer to be called, and we're going to share it with you on this evening. Okay, so here we go. This is Chief Yuya Assaan-ANU on Goddess Radio.
So again, welcome to our show, and we have the wonderful Chief Yuya with us, who is going to give us the benefit of his wisdom and learning. So, Chief Yuya, I want to ask you a couple of questions, and I'm going to be trying to pronounce the names correctly, so please forgive me if I say the name incorrectly. I'm going to do the best I can, and please feel free to correct me. So, in the opening of your book, Grasping for Roots of Divine Power, you mentioned the deities. Oboadi, the creator, did I say that correctly?
Sure, that's fine.
Nyame, Supreme Intelligence. Odo Mankoma, the Infinite Inventor. And Ananse Kokurogo, the Great Designer. Can you please explain to us who these deities are and the roles that they play or should play in our lives?
Sure. Well, in the book Grasping for Divine Power, what I basically did was, especially in the beginning, I spoke about the aspirations that we all have as walking people who possess a soul, and the aspiration to align ourselves with what I coined as the One, as signified by the numerical sequence 0 and 1. 0 being the feminine cipher, and 1 being the male intention for definition. So this is what I would call the one. And the reason I did that was to really provide an all-encompassing archetype or supreme intelligence without leaning towards any one in particular. So that particular, that literary work, it leans heavy on the Yoruba tradition of Nigeria. And of course, there are elements of what we call Ifa, which is like the words or the corpus from the Almighty. And there also are elements of the Orisha, which are the various consciousness of the Almighty. And the sequence of characteristics of an archetype that you mentioned earlier, those come from the Akan tradition, which is right next to Nigeria, which is in Ghana. And basically what I was speaking on was the various aspects and dimensions of the Almighty, or of the all-knowing, or whatever it is that we want to call it, the all in all. And one of the key points of that work that I tried to stress, and I felt it may have come across, was that it's an embracing of indigenous knowing, and it's an embracing of indigenous spirituality and deep thought. And we need not lean on one locality or one region for everything we need. So when you look at the various names and the worship ascriptions of the Almighty that were listed, it really just shows the different angles that one can take, or one may need to take, in order to fully become their guru self. So for instance, when you're dealing with the energy of Inyame, Inyame deals with the spiraling or the evolutionary force of the cosmos, the evolutionary force of the Almighty. And that spiraling energy is actually your movement, your actions, your it's what we would call like even plasma, or you could even call it that concept of DNA, or that concept of evolution, where there's actually some form of movement. And then and I'm just picking them, for instance. And then you have Odomankoma, which is really dealing with the inventive aspects of the Almighty, which is really, when we're dealing with the inventive aspects, we're dealing with really the artistic aspects, the creative aspects, pulling something from nowhere and bringing it down here. And basically, if you go through these different ideologies or different names, what it basically will do is it will show you the tool set that's available to you as being the Almighty encompassed in this cage of flesh. So that was the reason why I listed several names for the Almighty. And then all throughout the book, you have these different titles and inscriptions that one can look at and see, okay, well, these are some of the things that I have the potential to do and be, because at my core and at my essence, these are the things that I am.
Of questions. I tend to overanalyze everything. And so, for example, in Yame, since you said that's the spiraling voluntary course of movement, if I felt like I was stuck, like I couldn't move forward with whatever it is that I was trying to do, is this who you would suggest that I call upon for help in getting the movement flowing?
No, I wouldn't suggest that you ever call upon any of your ascriptions for help, but more so it's what you said earlier when you were saying that I tend to overanalyze. So you're a cerebral person. So when we're dealing with these higher aspects of the Almighty, we're dealing with the knowing. So once you realize that you are Inyame, then you realize that I'm never stuck, because Inyame is always moving, always vibrating, always evolving. And that evolution is ingrained in our very language when we use words like evening or revolutionary. So if Inyame is ever evolving, and I am made up of these atomic beginnings of Inyame, and they are vibrating, then in fact, I'm never sitting still. So it's an acknowledgement of something in terms of your knowing, which now helps you to reconstruct your reality and your perception of yourself shape. So that's how I would kind of approach that.
So in other words, we can be deluded by our feelings instead of actually being in the true actuality, the reality that we are, and that we are the gods and the goddesses. But the feeling, it's the emotion that can make you feel stuck instead of the actual, sort of actual being stuck. Is that what you're saying?
Certainly emotions have their value, and it is a feeling sometimes that we do need to tap into, but it's more so when you're dealing with the higher aspects, you want to deal with knowings. Now, when you want to deal with feelings, now you're dealing in the realm of the chakras, and these are necessary components of who and what we are, our feeling, or our emotive energy, once our energy is in motion. Okay, even though we're dealing with Inyame as a moving force, we acknowledge that Inyame is a moving force, but still at the same time desires and wants nothing. Inyame is a causeless cause. So when you get now to the chakra level and you have those feelings, or what we again would call electricity in motion or feelings in motion, then that's when you would call that, that's when you would go to that help aspect. Okay, I'm feeling maybe, like you said, stuck, and maybe I'm feeling like I can't really launch out and motivate. Well, that feeling of feeling stuck would then bring us down to the root chakra. And within the root chakra, in our Yoruban system, we have an archetype by the name of Eshu. And Eshu means to launch forward or to initiate. So then that would be the energy that I would go. Now, that's a much lower energy than the ones we were speaking about earlier, but those are the ones you would kind of tap into when what it is that you're experiencing is based in feeling, which is not, we don't negate our feelings, but there is a place to utilize them and utilize that energy in motion. And it's within those realms of the chakra where they serve their best purpose.
With the lower realms and climbing the ladder upwards, however I need to get there. So I do appreciate that. I want to drone on and on with you, but I have to give the other priestesses a chance because our time is always going too quickly. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Priestess Star, and thank you so much, Chief, for answering my question.
Well, thank you for asking it.
Okay, thank you. For me, I wanted to find out a little bit about who are the 7 African powers and what are their purposes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, first, when we're dealing with the 7 African powers, this is a Western invention, and we're dealing with the Orisha energies in a sense. And it's not to say that because they're a Western invention and it's something that we kind of derived over here in terms of trying to get to a place of understanding that they serve no value or anything like that. But it's a newer idea. And the 7 African powers are typically acknowledged as Obatala, and Obatala is the chief of the White Cloth, ruling over the energy of omnipresence. Yemoja, who the elation of her name is Yeye Omo Eja, the mother of the fishes, or the mother who is whose children are fish. So she is our maternal archetype, one of the highest maternal archetypes. And then you have Oya, and Oya means she tore it, and she represents the chaotic transformation and the supplanting of power that we utilize in the cosmos. Then you have Oshun. And Oshun relates itself to the source of life. So Oshun actually, within name, relates herself to the menstrual flow. In the Yoruba tradition, the term or the word Osu means moon. But even though Osu means moon, Osu or Irosu also means menstrual cycle, or like menstrual movement, menstrual flow. So again, it takes us to that concept of fertility. And then we have, where were we at? We have Ogun, and Ogun is the owner of vitality and rules over the art and the sciences of militancy as well as analytical thought. Ogun is also an archetype of iron. So this is where you get the iron will and resoluteness of your character. And then we go back to Eshu again, or some people call Eshu Ilegba. Ilegba is a corruption of the Yoruba term Ilegbara. So Ilegbar, when it came over here, became Ilegba, and eventually that became Legba. No less powerful. Yeah, no less powerful than the original, but the names change, things evolve as we move forward. And again, as we explained, that particular name deals with the launching forward and the initiating of energy. And then we also have Shango. And Shango deals with our powers and our energy of circumspection, our ability. It's a Heru type energy, and also even a messianic energy, almost in a sense, which is the energy of Shango, also known as the Lord of Lightning. Okay, and what are we at? Are we at 6 or 7 at that point? Let's see. Obatala, Oshun, Oya, Yemoja, Ogun, Shango, Eshu. Yeah, that's our 7.
Okay.
So those are the 7 African powers.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure.
And for our listeners, that would we would like to have them find out from you, how would they connect with the 7 African powers?
How would they connect with them? Okay, sure. Well, this is where it gets a little tricky, because a lot of times in the tradition, there's 1 or 2 things that occur. One, because a lot of times people are not as informed as to the pantheons and the kingdoms that exist within the Ifa and Orisha tradition, energies sort of get lumped together. So people, may have heard about the Orisha, and they assume that any energy that comes forth is an Orisha, and then they have ancestors. And this is not totally accurate. There are actually other families of energy. There's a lot of different families of energy within the Yoruba pantheon. So not only do you have Orisha, but you also have Imale, which are emanations from Oludumare. The 3 Imale, or that triplicity, would be Obatala, Orumila, and Oduduwa. Again, Obatala being the energy of omnipresence, Oduduwa being the energy of omnipotency, and Orumila being the energy of omniscience or all-knowing. These are much higher archetypes. Okay, and then when we come underneath that, then we have our Orisha energies, which would fall in those the other ones in those 7 African powers. And you also have the Iyami, or what we also call the Awon Ileyi, or the Ajay, which means the Uajet, or the Wajet, or as they say in this country, the witches. Okay, so there are different components that we tap, and then of course then it's the Egun, our ancestors. But how we would connect would be different. So the way you would connect with Obatala would be a bit different than how you would connect with the Orisha energies, because they're actually from a different family. So we'll start with the Orisha energies. First, I will have to just let all of your listeners know that despite what maybe some of you have been told, you don't need to be initiated in order to connect with the cosmic archetype. Okay, so sure.
Oh, that is wonderful to hear.
Yeah, so sometimes
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I always thought that, and you just confirmed my beliefs.
Yeah, it's we're a different people at this stage, and the truth is the profundity of spiritual and celestial experiences that we're having without being inducted into any mystery schools is something that we can lay claim to now because of the millions of years of our ancestors doing spiritual work and building up these gigantic pools of power. So now when the children are coming forth, they're coming forth holding the mantle of all that power. So their connections are much more profound than they may have been 5,000 years ago. Okay, so the rules and the regulations have to evolve, as we're evolving as people. So in truth, you are already connected with every Orisha energy, because the Orisha are a part of your whole body physiology. Okay, whenever you're going through the process of metabolism, and you're breathing in and you're breathing out, and you're building and you're destroying cells within your body, you are functioning in the aspect of Ogun, the destroyer. when you are connecting with your heart chakra, because within your heart, your chakras are your orishas as well. But when you're connecting with that heart chakra and that blood, you're connecting with Oshun, the rivers of blood. She's the archetype of rivers, but you have rivers inside of your body. So,
right.
And we could go on and on and on. But one of the first things you kind of want to look at in terms of your ability to connect to the energies is you want to look at what those energies represent and what you are doing and what you may perceive to be your everyday mundane life that is aligning yourselves with those energies already. There's already things that you're doing, and then of course there can be a more profound experience through ritual,
right.
But you certainly are already enacting the steps of those Orisha. But your key is, and one of the goddesses said it earlier, and I'm glad she did. She said, oh yeah, I understand the chakras. I understand those steps, however you get there. And that's exactly what it is. The key is not to embody or typify any Orisha energy, because of the fact that you come from this place that we call the etheric realm or the Akashic realm. You have within you have a soul. That soul energy, and it is the soul energy that is the inventor. This is when we go back to our terms, our Akan terms, the inventor being Odoman Kuma, or even if you have in the Kemetic or the Egyptian system, you have Khnum, the potter. But it is that ancient energy inside of you that designed and crafted these Orisha energies for your use. Right. So it wouldn't really be a viable plan to strive to become your creation. What you're doing is you're employing your creation so that you can strive to become a more perfecting you. Okay, so the aspiration has to be even beyond Orisha, and you have to view and see the Orisha as the tools and the implements that they are, with all due reverence, though. It's not that they're just it's not a master-slave relationship, but certainly there are energies that you can employ through different food, through different color, through different breathing techniques, activities. If you want to connect with the energy of Oshun more, get into a space where you start to understand the value of dark matter. Get into a space where you can just sit near a river and listen to the sound of the waves and the voices inside of the waves. Pay attention to the fact that the river, the moving river, always represents innocence because it's constantly renewing itself. Like they say, you can't step in the same river twice. It's the very simple things like that. Connecting with the energy of Shango is connecting with the energy of virility and being able to call people towards a cause. That drum is a unifier. In fact, in Mali, the word djembe means unity. So it is these very basic tools that you can use within your moving life, which allows you to recreate the mythology of these archetypes. And once you realize that you are the living mythology, connection becomes very simple at that point.
Yeah, it makes sense. It does. I also wanted to ask if you'd explain to our listeners, what is self-actualization?
Sure. Okay. Well, self-actualization is a process of, when we look at, and I like to work with words first because sometimes the spelling can, or the spells that are used within words can lead us away from the truths that are inherent in them. But the first thing, when we're thinking about self, okay, the self is many different things in many different people, depending on your level of awareness or your level of consciousness. But for the purposes of moving the dialogue forward, I will say that the self is the reflection of the higher consciousness that you've been endowed with. Okay, so in fact, as long as you are within this body frame and this body form and this particular stage of your transformation, you can never actually be the self, because the self is too far and too powerful to comprehend. But you can be a reflection of your higher self or of your greatest self. Okay, now reflecting that higher or greater self is one aspect. Okay. And then you have actualization, and the word actual within itself comes from an old word, energia. And energia is, as you may have guessed by the sound, is energy. So self-actualization is the process of energizing the reflection of the highest self, not just purporting the wisdom of it, and not just taking on the regalia and the costumery of it, but actually moving through the planet with the conviction of the reflection of your purpose. Your purpose now being the question that the Creator sent you down with, which is really you sending yourself with a question, but the question that you came to the planet with. And the question may be something as simple as, what does it feel like to have your heart broken by your own child? Because the Creator doesn't know that. The Creator doesn't have a heart in the form, in the sense that you have. The Creator doesn't have to work within the polarity traps of the chakras. So, so the Creator imprisons itself in this flesh cage and says, okay, now I got to go out and live this out so I can answer that question. And that within itself is a form of self-actualizing, a self-actualization. It's really a process of being self-determined and self-defining by the precepts and the parameters of your own life purpose.
It sounds very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. And Sister Shari, I know you wanted to ask Chief Jegna some questions yourself.
I do, actually, and thank you for that definition of self-actualization.
Yeah, that's really great.
That was great. I just want to say, we all are born with potentials and purpose, but often we get confused because societal rules influence us as well as the environment we were raised in. For example, a person may be born with obvious artistic tendencies, such as drawing, sketching from the time they hold a pencil, when they're young, but they were taught that we should pursue a steady paycheck and seek stability instead of pursuing becoming an artist, which may not allow for a stable income. So all of a sudden, the artist in us may turn to more of a business mindset. We may focus more on ways to make money, and the artistic potentials are lost. Or, for instance, someone may be born with true leadership tendencies, but we're raised in an environment where we're subjected to being put down and having our self-esteem or their self-esteem lowered to the point that their leadership tendencies get replaced with low self-esteem and resultant behaviors. So for many of us as adults, the potentials that we were born with get lost in life experiences to the point that we don't remember what our true potentials are. So I guess my question is, how does a person know what their true potentials are?
We all have the same potential. So that's number one, because we all come from the same emanating point. We all come from, and we all have a lineage of ancestral energies behind us, which is, some people go through a past life regression where they pull up the talents and the tools of their ancestors. And they say, oh, I didn't know I knew how to play the piano, or I just went and got in front of this and I started weaving baskets. I didn't know I could do that. So one of the things that a person wants to first tap into is that past life energy. And even when you look at, like the term indigo children, this new thing, and it's not really new, it's been out since the 70s, and people have been talking about the indigo children and the crystal children. And one of the things that you'll see that's consistent with the stories of these children is, one, they tend to be talented beyond their years, and they seem to be mentally, they have a grasp on concepts that someone much older than them would have. And basically, these are just young people who tapped into ancestral energy at a very young age. They came through with that awareness, with that understanding. And so tapping into what our potential is, or tapping into what exactly we are, is kind of important, and I don't mean to dissect your question, but I just have to kind of answer it the best I can. potentiality can be something that can be a little dangerous if we focus on it a little bit too much, because if you have potential for something, it basically means that you're not doing it. So, somebody will come and, you might, for those of us who are parents, and say, oh, this young man, this young woman be good for so-and-so. They got a lot of potential. Well, that's not enough for me. I need a little bit more than potential, So really tapping into what that purpose and what that question is, it involves you to move really into a place of levity, moving beyond the layers of ego that you've developed as a result of the traumatizing that's happened because your gifts have been suppressed, like you spoke about earlier, because that's basically you've been traumatized out of your gifts. And a lot of times we're traumatized out of our gifts. I don't know if anyone else can hear that echo or if it's on my side. Okay. Yeah.
Hopefully it'll go away.
All right.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we're traumatized out of our gifts because the people around us are vibrating at a much lower frequency than we are, and they don't understand the relationship between economy and the relationship between money. So someone has put this fictitious object named money in front of them and has programmed them with a belief in this thing called money, and hasn't really taught them the science of economy. And economy is dealing with relationships, and not just relationships to currency, but relationships to the natural laws that govern the universe. And when I can get into the relationship and have a good relationship with those laws and the flow of the universe, then all things flow into my world, including currency, because currency is no different than water flow, like water current. So, one of the challenges, and it's hard for us as adults a lot of times, because again, we have those layers of ego, is that we have to move to a place where we can see the tenets and the frailty of the structure that's been put in front of us, and acknowledge that, well, these people didn't have the spiritual ego that I have. And my spiritual ego tells me that I have a unique purpose. I have something I have to do. It's, so I know a lot of times we speak about the disillusion of ego as if ego is just this evil thing, but it's not actually. It serves to let you know that there's something that you're supposed to come here and do. So when you start tapping more into going beyond the archetypes, going beyond the deities, going beyond the gods, and just tapping into your Ipori, as we call it in my tradition, or your doppelganger, or your higher self, when you're tapping more into that energy, then that potential that you speak about becomes more defined, or that question or that purpose becomes more defined. And then you have to make the revolutionary choice. And the choice of a revolutionary is to cross a bridge of no return. And that's the hard part. Yeah.
You said so many good points, but I guess just for the listeners, another question I have is, what are steps that listeners can take to begin the self-actualization process?
Right.
Relating what you just talked about, what would be like specific steps that listeners can take to begin?
Okay. I would, there's two things I would utilize. One, I would suggest that people listen to the archives of this show and listen to the protection ritual that was offered in the beginning. If you listen to that protection ritual, for anybody who's listening, I would say you listen to the words that the goddess was sharing and write them down. And then what you're going to see is that when she created that safe space or that environment for all of us, what she basically did was she created a gateway to freedom where we could be who and what we are in our space. Now, she utilized the example of the 4 directions in order to do that. Okay, so it's a little bit different in my tradition, so I'm going to just share how we use the directions, or how we perceive the directions in my tradition. The north is air, the south is earth, the east is fire, the west is water. And in the middle is what we call Ile Ife. And Ile Ife means the house of love, or the house of life. Okay, so real simple exercise you can do real simple. As far as your first steps is to first create that environment, north, south, east, west, and you sitting in the middle, literally as a middle point. Okay. And you put elements in each direction that reflect the value of said elements. Okay. So in the east, for instance, for fire, maybe you may have a candle, something simple. Keep it simple. The west, you may have some water. In the north, you may have some incense or a feather. In the south, you may have a crystal or a plant. Just keep it real simple for right now. Okay. And what you want to do is you want to look at the properties of those 4 directions. Okay. And look at the things that you're already doing in your life that are signifying the properties and the energies of those directions. So if you're a person who maybe is finding yourself always having to let go, let things dissolve in your life, that's a vibration of the West. That's the water energy of transformation and fermentation. That's the corrosive aspects of water. Okay, so, and I'm not going to give you all of them, because if I do, then it won't be yours. I want you to own it, because you're sitting in the center. So what you want to start doing is that's where you sit to meditate with that higher energy of yourself, which is Ile Ife, again, the house of life. And in that higher energy, that's where you question, okay, what is your question that you need me to deliver? And start looking at the functions of your life that you already are doing. You'll be surprised, because some of you you already are actualizing your purpose, because if you weren't, you wouldn't be listening to this show. These are not the type of experiences that people do for fun, to hear these type of things. So your purpose is to be, like the goddess said earlier, to be in a now moment. The now moment requires you to give it its full attention. And when you can give it its full attention, you are fulfilling said purpose. But now, to define the space and the process so that purpose becomes more crystal clear, I would suggest you establish that circle, that 5-directional circle for yourself, and then go into a space where you start meditating on the mythology of your own life. And then you'll start to see how you're already going up those steps, or that ladder to self-actualization and fulfillment. And really, it comes to a place where you have to say, and I have to say like this, like, the heck with the world. We'll use that term. I'll keep it humane, because I know I'm here with women. So the heck with the world. We'll say it like that. And what that basically is your abandonment of human attachment and thought. And this will have to cause you to go into a place of non-etiquette. Okay, when you can go into that place of abandonment is when you can start to see, well, this is what my purpose is. Like you said earlier about the question about money. Well, those desires towards money are because of your social acclamation that you received as a child. And it's scary for many of us to live in that world of the feminine, emotive, and psychic energy where we're stepping out on faith every day, that place of no return, so that would be my suggestion as far as how to start ritualistically. Now, from an intellectual standpoint, I would advise anyone listening to create a 3-part chronicle of your life. Take the 3 major events and moments that you would consider that have occurred in your life and document them. Write them down. Okay. Those 3 major moments. And again, you want to see what your mythology is leading up to. Okay. And also get a reading. That would be my 3rd point. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sure.
I think you had some questions too.
Yeah, he sort of kind of touched on it a little bit, but maybe you can take it a little bit deeper. How the steps the listeners can take to kind of stay on the self-actualization path without being distracted by everyday life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, the first thing what you want to do is you want to infuse everyday life with your mystical life. There shouldn't really be a separation between the two. As long as there's a separation.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's got to be. And even if you're, you may say, well, I'm an accountant or I work in a toll booth. Like, what's so mystical about that? And everything that you do in this world is a gigantic symbol. In fact, you're just dreaming right now. All of this is a dream. So based on the fact that it's a dream, or the truth that it's a dream, because it's not commonly accepted as a fact, but the truism that we're living within a dream environment, then in fact, the same way when you have a dream at night and you wake up, you're immediately trying to think about what the dream meant. Well, you should be doing the same thing right now in your everyday quote unquote life, where you should be trying to decode and decrypt what exactly everything that you're doing means. Like if you work at a toll booth, okay, maybe it means that you're some sort of gatekeeper. You're coming with a gatekeeper vibration. So when you go to work, that's what you should consider yourself. No, I'm a divine gatekeeper. And these cars represent the vehicles of travel that we all use. These are the solar barks, or, these are the vehicles of flesh, the horses. And, you start looking at it in those terms, but to not get distracted by everyday life, you can't see your spiritual, magical, or mystical life as a hobby or as extracurricular. You have to see it as the cause and the subcontext for everything that you're experiencing. Everyday life is mystical. There's no separation between the two, and your potential and quality of self-actualization is determined by your ability or the deepness, the depth of your ability to acknowledge that everything I'm doing every day is mystical, because I am a mystical being.
So they can use that as well to complete the whole self-actualization process?
No. If you want to complete the entire self-actualization process, you have to die. So I can't really tell anyone what they need to do to complete the entire process, because we all came with our own unique question. The work that I do is I provide insight on and templates for you to figure out your groove and your modality to complete. For some people, they may have to go build a cabin in the woods and just rub on crystals all day and eat skunk cabbage. That may be, their pathways of what they're supposed to do. And for others, they may have to go to Wall Street and sit in the office somewhere with a dowser and use that dowser to buy and sell stocks. That may be their pathway to self-actualization. There are many roads for us to return back home. And anyone who stands before you and says that this is the way that you have to do it, whether because the Messiah of their tradition did it that way, or because that's the way that they did it, then those are people who you need to run from at top speed. You need to get away from them as quickly as you can. Your mythologies of self-actualization, in fact, I would say for 95% of your listeners are already known to them, but they just haven't been able to look at them and see the value. It's kind of the question that you were asking earlier about seeing the value in our spiritual work if it doesn't bring a steady paycheck. When you start to see the value in the ordinary things that you do, quote unquote, those ordinary things will begin to sustain you. It is your talents and your gifts that will bring you into a space of sustenance. So staying on track with self-actualization and really coming to a place of fulfillment, try to focus on the things that you do that don't require money. And it may be dancing, maybe drumming, and maybe crocheting, the things that really bring you to a place of just abandonment and blissfulness, the things that you're doing. And when you're looking at the clock, like when it's time to go to work and it's like 7:30 and you're like, oh man, I got to stop and get ready to go to work. I wish I could sit here and do this all day, even if I did it for free. Those are the things that you want to look towards. Sure.
Did you have something?
Yeah, I do. I actually do. Well, I was going to ask him to break down self-actualization a little more, but I don't think he can break it down any further than that. So I'm going to take advantage of this time to ask him. And before I do, I think that maybe I might make a suggestion that maybe our priestesses might put everything on mute, and maybe we won't get that feedback. We can just try it. I don't know if it'll work or not, but
I think if you turn your volume down and turn it off, that should take care of it.
Yeah, I did mine, and it's no longer hearing anything.
Yeah, I turned mine off as well.
That's wonderful. Okay. So, as I told you, I think I told you off the air, I've been listening to a lot of your lectures, and I really appreciate you and your lectures.
Sure.
And I wanted to ask you a question, and some of the things that I heard you talk about. You talked about yourself, and it's really, really fascinating how you came to your self-actualization, how you came to who you are. And I was wondering if you could just give us a quick summary of how you came. I know that you were once a preacher, a young deacon. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure.
How you speak to it? Mm-hmm.
Sure. I will have to say, certainly, when you're sharing information, that people kind of glean what they get from it. So I say that to say I don't actually remember which information I gave that said, hey, this is when I came into it. I mean, I'll share, but maybe, and then you'll tell me, oh, that's what you were talking about.
Well, let me just clarify, and let me just say that I think that your journey is just a wonderful journey.
Okay.
If you were a young deacon, your family thought that you had some good talent. You were articulate for your age, and so they put you out there in church, and all of us came from church.
All right, let me. Yeah,
I'll come from church.
I'll bring some clarity to that.
Okay.
In fact, it was I sought the church out myself. I came from a family of very artistic people, musicians and dancers. So I actually grew up in the world of the arts. Out of my focus and my I guess the attention that was put on me at a young age was my ability to play instruments. I was considered a prodigy at a very young age musically. So my first awakening into what I would call higher awareness and elevated awareness and consciousness came at the feet of what I would consider to be our great musicians. Okay. Yeah, I think someone's speaker is up. That's why we're hearing that feedback. I feel like I'm fighting against myself. Okay. All right. So, as I was saying, it was really the realm of music that kind of brought me into a place where I was able to say that, okay, there's more.
I'm sorry. Could the priestesses please turn your volumes down so that we can hear? I do apologize.
Sure, no problem. That'll just cause me to skip things I don't need to say, so it's okay. So basically, it was music that brought me in, and but I had a very from a very young age, I was a watery energy, but I came through as what we call Shango. That was the energy that was very strong on me, and eventually transmutated to Ogun being the archetype of iron. So I had a very interesting blend as a child, because I had a lot of this really strong, watery, psychic, feminine energy, but at the same time, I had this really hard-set warrior, militant energy of Ogun. So I was kind of like liquid metal. So it was kind of good because it allowed me to move through a lot of different spaces at one time. So music was the interest, and that was the entrance into the world of spirituality. More specifically, Jimi Hendrix, I would say, was probably my first priesthood that I really tried to induct myself into. Because Jimmy, to me, was just, not only was he a deity, but Jimmy was like Moses to me. Just listening to Jimi Hendrix, and I love Chuck Berry too, but it was certain artists that I really attached to very strong. And I began to seek out other information around the age, at a young age, I started reading novels. I was really into Shakespeare, and I was able to start decoding some of the information, and I sought out the Islamic mosque. Okay. I really think everyone should put their phones on mute. That will probably help a lot. Yeah, that would probably help out a lot if you're able to do that. Okay, there we go. So yeah, as far as the story, coming in through that, I went through various schools of learning, went through again, a nation of Islam. And then later on through music, I was commissioned by a church. They needed they needed a musician. And I found myself in that environment. And once I was in that environment, I was I didn't come in wanting to preach or anything like that. In fact, I was extremely quiet as a young person, because this voice that I have now, I've had this voice since I was like 7 years old. So, you know, it created a lot of social awkwardness for me as a child. So I didn't really speak much. And at one point, there was a pastor who kind of got an idea that I had some level of intellectualism. So what he used to do was when he would do his sermons, he would ask me to do the research for his sermons for him. Around that time, I was about 14 years old. And there was one Sunday where he couldn't preach, and he asked me to do the sermon for him. It was some work scheduling or something, conflict. So I ended up having to get up and speak in front of everyone, which I didn't like to do really, but I was used to performing in front of people, so that wasn't really a problem. And when I spoke, there was a kind of a big reaction. You know, people were surprised that I actually had something to say, and my perspective of spirituality wasn't really all that Christian, because I didn't grow up in a Christian church. Later on, just through my studies, I kind of became like a novelty, and I used to do revivals all over the place, and people would have me come in and teach. I had more of a teaching ministry than a preaching ministry. And I eventually became a youth pastor. And as a youth pastor, I really took this book, this Bible, and this culture of Christianity very serious. I took it so serious that I studied it to the degree that it actually led me out of the church, because I realized I'm not getting as much as I'm supposed to get in this environment. And it's not really for me anymore. So that led me to various other schools of study. I won't go through all of them for the sake of time. But in every school of study, I was always blessed by the spirits, because every guide and every teacher I ever had was a renegade in that particular system. I never really had too many traditionalists that I studied under. It was always the one person who was the outlaw, who I would study with, and they would say, listen, I'm going to give you the real stuff. You know, come over here. You know, so it was like that every single time. And I guess in time, I became that same type of teacher. You know, so eventually my studies led me to the Orisha tradition. And I had already received several initiations in different traditions already, before receiving my initiation into the Orisha tradition of Ogun. But you know, I kind of was initiating myself as a child, because around 7, 8 years old was when I really started doing ritual work, going out into the woods and starting bonfires and doing water scrying, things like that. And, you know, seeing things. But the problem was, at that age, I didn't realize that other people didn't see them as well. So I didn't think it was anything special. You know, I remember seeing murders, you know, as a child, in spaces that murders had occurred 10, 15 years prior. And wow, I didn't know. I thought everybody else saw it, because, you know, sometimes you don't know if something's a memory, especially as a child, or if it came from another place. So I thought this was a memory we all had. And I remember sharing it years and years later with my mother. And she had told me one of the apartments we lived in, it was rumored that someone was killed in there. And I said, yeah, he was killed. And I described how his body was dragged out of the back door and all these different things. And, I thought we all knew that. I thought, and then I remember another time, just coming into the realization, I remember I went and got a gun out of my cousin's home when I was a child. I knew where the gun was. I always knew. I thought everybody else knew, because guns and metalwork always called to me. I always had a connection with metalwork. And apparently back in the 30s, there was a gangster that used to rent a room in this house. It's an old house in the Bronx. And that's all they really knew, was this gangster who rented this room. So I remember one time my uncle speaking about it. I was like, yeah, he left his gun in that panel underneath the dresser. There's a panel, it's a false panel, and there's a gun wrapped in cloth in there. And again, me thinking everybody knows this. And of course, we opened the panel and we found a gun inside of there. So, it was a lot of divine coincidental experiences like that later on I realized was the mythology of my life. And these were the things that helped me to be able to say, you know what, I'm on to something here. And I didn't have to have any special initiations or anything to pull from those gifts that I had as a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old. So let me keep moving in that direction, in that egoless fashion, and try to maintain my sense of wonderment with the world. And I think that sense of wonderment and awe is what has allowed me to get as far as I've gotten, because I'm still fascinated by so many different things. And I think that's what's actually sustaining me in this.
For today, if you have a calling, no one can initiate that. That's already been initiated. So I think that's what the word calling is for. And I have a personal question with you. I listened. One of the goddesses that you introduced to me, and I heard her name before, but you gave explanation to who she was, and it's Olokun.
Yeah.
And she kind of relates to me with another goddess that I think I'm being called to, it's Morgan. And the reason why I feel like I'm being called to these two is because right now I'm going through some type of chaos. And I also listened to you talk about chaos and how chaos can be a good thing, especially with music and all of that. But I guess we'll save that for a different show. But I really enjoyed you talking about how certain musicians get into the chaos. My question to you, though, I'm going to make this short because we do have to move on, is what is the difference between Olokun and Yimanya?
Okay. Well, again, this is where we kind of have to have a grasp of the socio-geographical factors that go into the creation of certain archetypes. And the reason I say that is because Yemoja is an archetype of salt water, and particularly saltwater rivers. Now, here in the States, we don't really have that many saltwater rivers. Like, so usually when we have them, but there's not really that many of them. So usually when we think about saltwater, we immediately go to the ocean. So we'll say, okay, Yemoja is an archetype of the ocean. But that's not actually true. Yemoja is an archetype of salt water, period. And salt water can be in a river. Now, Olokun is the energy over all water. Salt water, muddy water, fresh water, any type of water you can think of that's Olokuns. Your shower water, the moisture exhaled from my mouth right now as I'm speaking, that moisture that's life-giving, that is Olokun's water. Your blood, your saliva that your fiery sword sits in, the fiery sword being your tongue, all of that is Olokun's. Okay. And
you also said that she rules over dark matter too.
Oshun is the archetype.
And the darkness of the ocean.
Right. Well, Olokun, Oshun specifically is closer to the aspect of dark matter because Oshun deals with the congregative forces of the environment, the things that hold everything together. Now, through our limited understanding, a lot of times we call that word love. So we'll say that Oshun is an archetype of love because love is what brings people together, but love also transforms people at the same time. Now, Olokun, because Olokun deals with the distance and the depths, Olokun also governs the concept of space. So you'll find that when you're going through experiences where you're tapping into that Olokun energy, you literally just want your space. Like, I just need, I need to not talk on the phone too much right now. I need to just really be in my own space, because Olokun governs that. But Olokun also more specifically governs the energy of the subconscious mind, because it's those deep depths unexplored inside of us that Olokun reigns over. And even what many of us like to call our demons, because our demons are like the sea creatures that have been suppressed, our issues and our ideas, and even your spiritual talents. Your spiritual talents can become your own oppressive demons if you don't express them. Because if you squeeze and put something under pressure and repress it, anything for an extended amount of time, then what's going to happen is that you're going to deform it. And once you deform it, it becomes monstrous. And it will do all kind of things to get from under the yoke of your hand and your pressure. So it is Olokun that governs that realm of the subconscious and even the deep thought demons that we have inside of us. Thank you.
And you make sense of consciousness, of divine consciousness, and you bring it down to us. And you are very truly gifted. I have one other question to ask you here. Now, I know
that Janine, we have a lot of questions, Goddess Janine, and our time is running very short.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry.
Let's go ahead and
ask them about the life partners.
Well, we'll come back to that if we have time for it, but I do want to kind of follow along with the questions that we have. So, Chief, in your book, Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships, you say some really deep things in there. And one of the things that you said in there is you say the invasive onslaught of music, movie, and television programming influences our mate selection and relationships, which creates confusion and failed expectations. Like that song, You Are My All in All, Without You I Am Nothing, I Died for You, You Are My Everything, etc., that type of music. How do you feel this music affects our relationships or our beliefs in what a relationship should be?
Right. Well, first, what I'll do is I'll use the example from the book. And it's always good when the way you just did it, the way when people ask me a book and give me the example, because most of the time I don't remember. I don't go back and read that stuff. So I'm glad you gave me that. So thank you. I was a little nervous there till you.
You're right.
Until you ran it down. I was like, oh man, I hope she's not going to ask me to try to remember something. But, so in that instance, what I was speaking about, it just as far as that projection that media gives us of that all in all, I would die for you, and this love being this do or die experience. And of course, when there's a breakup, you feel that same level of passion towards the hate vibration. What it basically a lot of times it does is it removes the possibilities for brotherhood and sisterhood. So, for instance, you have a lot of people who are in marriage relationships and they have no friends outside of their marriage because they've used their mates to disguise all of their insecurities and all of their dysfunction by saying, well, you need to be my friend, you need to be my lover, you need to be my this, you need to be my that. And that's not actually, that's not healthy. So for instance, even me personally, if I'm in a relationship with a woman, I only need you to be my woman. I don't need to be your friend. I don't need to be anything. I don't need you to be anything other than my woman, because there's a specific role that energy plays. And as far as maybe her wanting to go to the mall with me or something, or have me look at shoes or whatever little thing that I don't feel like doing. That's really where you need to cultivate a sense of sisterhood. So a lot of times, unfortunately, we don't cultivate sisterhood like this show that you guys have going. This is a rarity, as you know. Oftentimes, unfortunately, there's a very insidious energy that we spread amongst each other, like brother to brother and sister to sister. So in those instances, when you listen to those type of songs, they really, what they do is they compartmentalize a relationship, and they take it outside of the context of a greater community. And it is that greater community that will maintain the sanity of the relationship when the couple loses focus. So that would just be one example of what media does. And also in terms of the failed expectations, it goes back again to, you're supposed to be my all in all. But in fact, when you have a relationship with someone, it's supposed to be it's supposed to be like a religion almost, in that you're perfecting each other. So coming into a relationship and saying, well, accept me as I am and I shouldn't have to change, that's silly, because you should want to change each other. You should want to transform and evolve one another. If not, don't even engage in a relationship. If you're just looking to crystallize yourself at the day that you met, and sadly, I would say in terms of the masculine perspective, this is a mistake that many men make when they look at women. They assume that women don't change. And on the reverse, women assume that they can change men. So we have some really thwarted misconceptions about one another.
I have to say, I agree with you. I have sort of a different take on it. I've always had issues with love songs. They drive me crazy, because when people are listening to these love songs, I think, especially if you're dancing to them, you can meet someone, you can meet a guy in a club, and here comes this love song. And as a musician, you know that music carries the vibration. It carries the vibration of the emotions that are being put into that song in the vocalist's voice. And it can create an illusion of feelings that really aren't there. You're responding to the vibration of the music, but you think you're responding to the person who's holding you.
Right.
And then you end up in all kinds of trouble, because your romance started on the illusion of a song that someone got paid to sing.
Right.
So that's my thing with that. That has always driven me crazy, the love song aspect of it. So I was really gratified to hear someone else say that. So thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah.
And actually, a lot of what you said, I hope a lot of men and women are listening, because
I do.
They tend to put off things on one another a lot. There's a lot more to it that another author that she just wrote a regular romance book, but the words that she has is so eloquently said in her book. It's called Naughty Sins of the Saint. And I am not kidding. You've got to read the series, and it talks a lot about what Chief I'm doing that the wrong way.
They work. They all work. Don't worry about it.
I apologize profusely about that.
It's okay.
But what you just said is so well said, and backed up by what you said in such a profound manner. But it's what I like about it. Usually you would hear a female saying this. So it means a lot to a lot of women, especially, to hear it coming from a man. The fact that you see it and you have embraced it, and it's trying to say something about it. And I want to let you know that I really, really appreciate it.
Sure.
And one of the things regarding this same book, Solutions for Dysfunctional Family, in your book you say that relationships should be a religion. What do you mean by that?
Okay, sure. Well, your relationship is supposed to be something that brings you back to your source. Okay, and by definition, religion, the word religion means to bind to the source. Okay, or to pull back to the source. Now, of course, the source it goes back to what we were talking about, self-actualizing. The source is where you will find your reflection of who and what you are. So when you join into a relationship, what you're really looking to find is not just your reflection, but your complement that will help you to climb those steps to your source again. Unfortunately, a lot of times within a relationship, especially I can say from a masculine perspective, because men have an innate desire to worship, they will go straight to the worship piece and will skip over what is supposed to happen. So for instance, when I conjoin myself with my woman and we're engaged in the act and I'm entering the course, in fact, I am traveling back to the source in the origins of where I came from. So I'm recycling myself. So in that sense, our sex is very recreational or very recreational. You know, that within itself is a tenet and possibility of religion. And in the same instance, it is the interplay between expansive positive energy and contractive negative energy that my woman needs to also experience by me entering into her course, or by me just sharing an idea with her and planting some seeds of information with her for her to say, okay, let's see what I can produce and cultivate with these seeds. So within that in itself, you begin to manifest the highest sciences of the universe and those highest binary push-pull 0-1 sun-moon sciences. So in that effect, it is like a religion. It's a religious experience.
And I had a question too. Well, we recently had a show about whether we are our own ancestors. And your book, you state that your children are not your children; they are your ancestors. Please expand on that for us.
Sure. You know, understanding that anyone who comes through the planet in this dispensation that we're currently in, these are people who are coming back to rebalance a karmic imbalance that they have within their life path journey. So they've already been here. Okay, so sometimes we can kind of delude ourselves with the notion that when we co-create children, that co-creation only happens between ourselves and the person that we're co-creating with, and not that we've created a contract in another realm before we arrived here. And that contract being, your children may be like your best friend. It may have been your best friend from 300 years ago. And you say, listen, when I come back, I want you to do me a favor. Could you come back as my mother or as my father this time? Because, you know, there's some things about you that I trust that I'm going to need. So I'm going to need you to have this type of spirit. I'm going to need you to be overbearing, or I'm going to need you to be very nurturing, or whatever it is that energy is that we particularly need to fulfill our purpose. So in fact, the children that we bring forth are really our astral mates. Some of them that you bring forth, you just really be hooking them up. You're giving them a ride to get here, you know. And even as a parent, you can kind of sometimes tell which children are more yours and which children are less yours. But in fact, they are all ancestors. And keeping that in mind, it will do several things. One, there's a level of respect that you have when you present an environment to an elder or to an ancestor. You're not going to go to your ancestral shrine and have like cat food on it and, you know, feces or whatever. You're going to make sure that their arrival is a clean space. It's a welcoming space. And you're giving them, when you go to your shrine, you're going to put on it all the tools that ancestral energy may need to evolve itself. So it's the same thing when you bring a child into the world. You're going to make sure that the environment is established in a way that they have all the tools and the weaponry that they need in order to actualize in this life journey. Because the first thing that you have to understand is that if they came here because there's an imbalance that they have to rectify. So they picked you to help them rectify that balance. So, you know, I would speak to it in that sense.
Is your phone still on mute? Please to see that.
Oh dear, yeah. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, it was.
Sorry.
I'm just talking away. I'm sorry. You said that we should utilize a partner litmus test. What do you mean by that?
Well, some of the litmus tests, a lot of times, again, and it goes back to the love song thing. A lot of times when we come into our situations looking to choose our life partners, we don't put any qualifications for their credibility in the mix. So if you can look at your own your own self shape as being surrounded by a series of concentric circles, then when you meet an individual, they should immediately go to the outermost circle. And there are certain tests that one should put them through, or one should allow them to go through, which is a better way to put it, in order to let them earn their place closer to the center, where, of course, you are. One of the mistakes that we make, and this goes to what we were speaking about earlier about the music and the songs and the lyrics, is that as soon as we're catapulted to a certain space because of electrical impulses, through the way the butterflies in our stomach, the physical chemistry, things like that, we immediately place a person in our essential essence, in our core space, without really giving them the opportunity to show us where they should be placed in the pantheon of our orbit. How far out should that planet be, and how close should that planet be to us? So the litmus tests really serve as to really see where a person is at, where someone is at, simple things. Test a person's level of decisiveness. As a woman, you all do this automatically. Really, when we talk about a litmus test, I think it's really something more critical for men, because we're not as savvy. But a woman has kind of a biochemical instinct to test certain things right away. Now, if she chooses to go against it, then that's another story. But immediately you all can kind of sense: can I reproduce with this person? Does this person have good spiritual seed, mental seed, biological seed? You'll even smell the individual. You look at how they walk, how they stand, how they hold things. If you say, I'm hungry, how many times they say, I don't know, what do you want to get? I don't know, whatever you want, babe. And meanwhile, he's thinking he's being accommodating, and you're saying, oh man, this guy, he's a punk. I can't do anything with him. So it's a lot of these things that you guys are kind of already biologically savvy of, and spiritually. So those litmus tests are really, they're for both of us, but I would say it is the men who are really in a deficit, not knowing how to choose their lovers wisely, and really using false criteria. And a lot of this has to do because a lot of times men don't have plans for their lives. So if you don't have a plan for your life, you won't really be clear on what type of team members that you need to pull into your orbit. It may be that woman who you say, oh, well, we're just good friends, but she has my back. She helps me with this. She helps me with that. She typed up my papers in college for me. So, and she has a crush on you, and you're really just abusing her, because you're not going to be anything for her. But she would be the one who would probably be the better team member, because of the fact that she's in tune with your mission, if you have one.
Right. Excellent. That's similar to the lecture I've given my 27-year-old son. Yes. All the men listening, I hope. Exactly. Men and women, both.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way, even women, I would suggest with women, when you meet men, to really ask them what their plan is right away. And if they start giggling or giving evasive answers, then I would just kind of put them in a category of biological recreation. If you just want them to serve a biological need that you may have at that time, that's one thing. But if he doesn't know how to use a hammer and a screwdriver or change a flat or really create a 25-year business prospectus, you need to really give some thought as to what you're actually doing, because as a woman, you're a sponge and you absorb everything. So you're going to absorb that lower vibration And then you're going to be calling me later for a reading and asking me why nothing is working right in your life and you feel like you have blockages. Okay, so just save your money in the phone call and, stop consorting and slumming with lower vibrations.
I like that. We're laughing so beautifully.
No,
you said it so nicely. I know, that's what I mean. He has us laughing, but he's being so absolutely true to what it is that we're laughing, but we're laughing at ourselves in a sense, because we know we've been guilty of some of that, or being the other way, being what he said, saying exactly what we want, and met with men looking at us or women looking at men and going, they don't understand when you're being exactly correct about what you want and don't want, and you walk away. Sorry, you're not here.
Well, but you know what? I just have to say one thing, that I do agree with everything that you say, and I love how you termed that we need to stop slumming with the lower vibrations, because we do have a tendency danger. But I think the reason for that, in our defense as women, is because as soon as we can reach our hands out, we are given a doll to care and to nurture and to change and take care of. And even though it's a doll, and we talk to it and we play house with it and we feed it and we sing it, it's an inanimate object. And we get used to having relationships with inanimate objects, teddy bears, dolls, or doll houses, all of those things. So by the time we become adults, it has been ingrained in us. So it's very easy for us to get ourselves involved with a man who is emotionally unavailable, because we're used to having and loving inanimate objects that can't return that love, that can't hug us back, that doesn't bother to ask us how our day was. So we're basically just bringing our childhood training into our adulthood as women, and that is what my personal opinion as why that happens.
You are absolutely. That was deep. That is so great. On the teddy bear and the doll. That was just
wow. So what does that say? Set mine on fire.
And conversely, the men are told, to get a G.I. Joe, get out there, play football, conquer, win, be teammates with your bros, this sort of thing. No one sees it. Don't cry. You got to be a man. Stand up straight. So they don't know. They weren't allowed to express themselves emotionally. They were told to don't cry because it's not what a man does. So they keep their emotions inward because that's what they were trained to do. So basically, you've got the two genders speaking two completely different languages and wondering why we don't understand each other.
Yeah, because it's been passed on and on.
I would add something to that. Where, in fact, to a large degree, I do actually agree with that form of us being raised. I don't particularly agree with us receiving the same education, as boys and as girls. And I do actually feel that a woman, I mean, certainly the I guess Barbie doll, that example, it's totally on point. I agree. But I do feel that young girls should learn the science of nurturing. And again, if you're living within a healthier community, there's going to be plenty of babies around, like real babies, for you to nurture, as well as other girls and cousins and friends and, and things like that. It kind of goes back again to the deprivation of brotherhood and sisterhood that we don't really have. But I think also some of the lines of mysticism have been broken between male and female, and that has led to a breakdown in relationships. For instance, I'm not going to cry in front of any of my women. That's not going to happen. So, because that's what,
Cry because this was environment, or is it something that is innate in you and spiritually innate in you?
It's innate in me to always show my women strength. And I can show them vulnerability. I'll show vulnerability at times, but one of the reasons why they're with me is because of the resoluteness and the strength and the stability that I'm able to bring to their world and the mental ordering. You know, this is one of the reasons why the women actually, like she said, they go for the bad boys. Well, it's because the bad boy is directed. No matter what's going on around him, he's saying, no, I'm going to do it this way. And instinctually, a woman realizes this is a quality of leadership. Now, it may be perverted because he may be doing things that may not be healthy, but at the same time, there's at least some remnants of testosterone and manhood left. I would actually presuppose that in this environment, that most of the males are more effeminized and they are more emotional. This is one of the reasons why you have such a high degree of domestic abuse, because when you are living in an environment, well, domestic abuse where it's a man abusing a woman, or a male, I should say, abusing a woman. I would say it's because the male has been effeminized. So in that environment, he's not really able to understand his feminine nature. So he becomes catty. But the only problem is that because he has this overabundance of estrogen, a lot of that times this is happening because either he's masturbating too much or he's ejaculating too much. So he's releasing all of his testosterone. So he's got more estrogen. And he's in this environment with who he perceives to be another woman. So two women in this environment, he becomes catty. But then within that, he realizes I'm also bigger and stronger. So, I can vibrate on this low vibration of femininity, which is because women are not naturally catty if they live together. But if you're unable, if you're disappointed in yourself as a female or in your feminine energy, then those type of things are going to come out. So a male trying to be a woman is going to be disappointed because that's not his natural disposition. So a lot of times that will lead to violence, on his part, because he still has the male aggression coupled with all of this.
Because he's rebelling against his nature.
Yes, he's been distorted. He's been distorted from his nature. And I would say telling we're risk takers. And the things that I've been able to discover out in the world, I can't discover the profound truths of the world the same way that you can. Because you're feminine, you can go into Olokun's realm because that dark, contrastive, murky energy, that's your world. That's not my world. My world is the expansive light energy to go out in the world. I like to ride my motorcycles really fast. I like to see what that's like. You going down a highway at 130 miles an hour, you only can die if something happens. But I enjoy doing that. And some of the information that I have been delivering in my segments and books comes from the insights that come from those experiences, from those near-death experiences that I've had, or boxing or fighting and things like that. Because I connect with the intelligence of the world differently than how you connect with it. So my statement in terms
we have a lot of. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say my statement in terms of me not crying in front of my women is because certain things are not appropriate, and for me that's not appropriate. Yeah.
Right.
I can go with that. I just want to add one more thing, and then I'll shut up so everyone else can have the chance. I just want to go back to what you said about women liking the bad boys because they show a certain type of leadership. That's true. I've always said that if we could refocus the gains into doing something positive, because what they're doing, it shows organization skills, they command respect, it shows leadership skills, it shows intelligence, much like the CEO of a corporation. And if we could direct their focus and these skills that they have within them into doing something positive with them, they would be unstoppable. But that's all I wanted to say to add to that.
I would like to also add that, and I agree with you, Priestess Rhonda, that we're not honing in on their talents or what they could possibly be in their lives. And I think that's because our young brothers don't have rite of passage the way other traditions do or other countries have. And I think that's very important. We need to start developing rites of passages. And I do believe Chief Yuya sponsor some of those rites of passages, not just with young boys, but with young girls too. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, I've actually been teaching and doing rites of passage since about 2003, maybe a little earlier than that. And I work with gang members in particular, and I work with young men and young women. Although I do enjoy working with the men more, I will say that, the young boys, because there are certain experiences that a man is not supposed to bring a young girl through. So I'll just kind of put that out there. There has to, for those of you who have rites of passage or have the idea, make sure you do it with balance. If you have young girls there has to be a woman there. And if there's young men there has to be a man there, because, it's you can't usurp a young girl's power. It's just like sometimes when I'm on shows and people ask me to break down the sciences of the menstrual cycle. I know a lot about it, and I've studied. I could write a book on it, but I don't talk about it on air. Never have, because it's a perversion. It's a distortion. It's not for me to tell you about something that I've never experienced, or to try to usurp your power in that way. And that's where some of that confusion comes from. But certainly rites of passage are very necessary, and they have to reflect the differences in what we're required to present to the planet.
Start some type of organ. I've heard they have different organizations starting young men with rite of passage classes and organizations like that. And that's one of my dreams, to do that. And not just with women. This I would like to start the organization with men, because I think it's very important that young boys have that role model in front of them to teach them rites of passage. Just like I believe, and I agree with you, young girls should have females there to teach them rites of passage also.
Right.
In regard to the last part of that, I'm going to kind of add something before. I know we have some other questions, but I wanted to kind of say, I agree with you with the rite of passage for young people. My son and his friend at the age of 15 last year, what we did, we have a friend of ours who's in the Lakota tribe, and since we didn't have any what you would call rite of passage that we thought was appropriate for them with us, we went out to their home, and they have a lot of land, and they did a male rite of passage with them, of where they did sweat lodge, and they put them out on out in the forest part of their land, and they had them, do like a vision quest and all these things. And they didn't quite discuss it with us when they came back,
right.
But they said they felt so different, and they really enjoyed it, and they felt like they did something. So I agree with that entirely, and I wish there was more of that.
Yeah, and it doesn't end.
I'm sorry?
No, I was just saying, and it doesn't end. It's something that we should be doing up until our elder years. It just doesn't end when you're a young person.
Right. There are many. Absolutely. Yeah. There are many. I do have to say that it's a shame that you wouldn't, shed a tear every now and then to show, I think it's not a weakness. One of the things that I have to say, seeing a woman cry, honestly, that is not always a sign of weakness.
No, not for a woman. But very much
a sign.
Right.
No. Let me finish. Seeing a woman say that, cry is a sense of strength. Same thing as it is for a man. Because I watched my husband, who's a strong man all the time, and I saw him cry. And that, to me, took a lot of strength for him to do in the situation that he had to deal with. I thought he was the most strongest that I've ever seen him at that point. I'll tell you that. Because the situation that he had to deal with and everything else that was there, and to see him, it was not a break, it was not a weakness, it was an utmost strength that I thought it was. So I guess it's just a perception of things. But
well,
we are all
for your
human.
husband. Like you said, it's your husband, and like I said, I won't do that. So we have to respect our individual stances and our individual responsibilities. Your husband and I...
I understand. I was just saying in general for men.
Yeah,
but,
some things you can't generalize because we all run our homesteads differently. So based on how your homestead is ran, that was a plus for him. That was fine. and based on how my homestead is ran, there's certain other things that I have to carry, and that's important, so I don't disagree with that at all. I'm giving him the thumbs up and, giving Ashe and energy to my brother, cause he's my brother. I love him, so, that's all good. But for me, I do something a little different that works for me, and we have to figure out what works for us.
As she does, I'm going to just piggyback on what she said, and I do respect what you're saying. And you're right. Everything doesn't work for everybody. All things are different. But at the same token, let me just ask you this. In the spirit of yin and yang, I know that I have a little bit of Ogun in me, even though I'm female. I have a warrior. I have a warrior spirit, along with Oya. So would you say that with each individual, they may have a little bit, regardless if they're male or female, if you're female, you may have a lot of, let's say, Yuya in you, but you might also have that little bit of the male aspect. And same for males. Even though he might be a male, he still has a little bit of that female aspect. And maybe that female aspect that he has is one that allows him to release himself from time to time, not always, but release himself from time to time. And I know personally, there's nothing more sexy than to see a man just break down once in a while, to hold him.
That's what I'm saying.
And to feel that energy, because that's a transfer. That's I mean, I know that sounds kind of boring to them.
Yeah, it's sexy to see a man broken.
No.
That's not breaking.
You said break down now.
Jump in here.
It's a type of healing. Crying is a type of healing.
Okay.
It's not a type of breaking.
Well,
I don't think cry, and
we certainly do.
Sorry.
Yeah, I cry. Mm-hmm. I'm probably the most sensitive person on the phone right now. I as a child, I used to cry at cartoons. I used to cry when I used to watch Popeye. Seriously, the way Bluto used to treat Popeye. Every time Bluto would take olive oil and beat up Popeye, I would cry every time. So I mean,
I used to hate that too. I have to tell you.
It was like mean. Like, why would you treat someone like that? He's just sitting there walking down the street, and here you come for no reason. You're gonna take his girl and be. It's like it's upsetting me now as I'm talking about it. So no, I mean, for him, you got to realize when you're dealing with these energies, you're dealing with polarities. You're not dealing with sexes. So even though we say that Ogun is male, what that just means is that he's electric. Yemoja being female just means that she's magnetic. So again, my brother shedding a tear in front of his family, that might not have been a magnetic feminine thing. That might have been actually a masculine thing, because he exposed himself. Your masculinity causes you to go out, to go outward. So he exposed what he was. He brought it forth. So on some levels, that can be still perceived as a masculine thing. So I wouldn't necessarily say that was him showing his female side or anything like that. But again, I wasn't there, and I don't know what he was thinking or what he went through at the time. I can only speak for me. But there's different perspectives, and I think a lot of times, unfortunately, in our society, our perspective of how we should function as men does not come from men. It comes from women and from our mothers. And there's nothing wrong with that, because it's her job to acclimate us to the planet. She's the one who tells us, listen, you can't pee in the middle of the floor, and you can't cough in people's faces. And, she's acclimating us to society. But then there's a moment where, like the sister said, well, my sons went on this rites of passage, and I don't really know everything they did, which was, that's the way to do it. She's not supposed to know, because there's a moment where you break away and you say, now I'm inducted into the society of men, and the way that I will move throughout the planet is going to be different. And the women may not understand it. In the same instance, I'm not trying to understand everything you're doing and feeling. That's the walls of mysticism that have to be there and respected. So when you cry at things that I don't cry at, I don't say, why don't you stop being a crybaby? I respect the fact that you're a woman and you're an emotional energy. And in the same energy, in the same token, if I'm aggressive at a situation, it shouldn't be, why don't you calm down? You're so angry. It should be, I understand, brother, that you need to focus your anger somewhere. No problem, because that's your disposition.
Yeah.
But we don't,
yeah, the energies of the energies of the female is internal, and the energies of the male is external.
Right.
And I want to discuss one. And since we're talking about male and female energy, Oduduwa. Oh gosh, I love the way you explained that. Along with Orumala and Obatala, being the higher divine forces. And in being priestesses, I think that Oduduwa would be closer to our heart. Would you explain Oduduwa's power in comparison to the other one, Orumala and Obatala?
Yeah, it kind of like what you just said in the question. You just explained it, because there is no comparison, because Oduduwa is the power. There's no comparison of power. Without Oduduwa, there's no power. Oduduwa, of course, it is a female energy, and Odu means womb, and Wa means woman, or to bring forth. So, and Dudu, the second Du in Oduduwa, means black. So Oduduwa is the womb of the black woman that comes forward. And this represents omnipotency in the universe. And when you're dealing with the sciences of Oduduwa and you're dealing with that womb, it also relates itself to the iron cauldron pot that, of course, we use in so many different practices. Yeah, that's actually the womb. Okay, even in Ogun, if you're dealing with Ogun and the blacksmith always has that pot of Oduduwa. He's very close to Oduduwa because it is inside that pot where there's enough power to transform our character and being. Okay, so in the same instance, and I will take another energy of Oya, which was mentioned earlier, you have the relationship between Oya and Shango. And though Shango is the king and Shango is the leader, Shango derives all of his power from Oya. In fact, he even came to the throne in the mythology through his sister, Dada. Because at that time, Dada was supposed to be the ruler, and her advisors weren't listening to her because she was a woman. So they were giving her a lot of flack. So Shango at the time was like a young boy. So she was like, okay, strategically, she was like, how can I maintain my throne and get these guys off my back? So what she did was she appointed her little brother Shango into the place of the king, but she still ruled the kingdom, but Shango was like a figurehead until he became an adult. So what that really signifies is that rulers are always put into a position of power by their women. And it takes you right back to even the Bible with Christ and the tears having his feet washed by Mary Magdalene. And in this moment is when he was actually anointed to actually be the Christ. He couldn't really be the Christ. He was just Yahshua until he was anointed by the woman. So in the same instance, we really can't energize into our purpose unless we tap into that energy of Oduduwa. Now, surprisingly, here in the West, Oduduwa is rarely spoken of. No one really even talks about, just like no one talks about Olokun much. But sure.
Want Priestess Rhonda to comment.
Actually, Priestess Janine, I'm sorry. We've only got 11 minutes, and we still have some more things that I just need to jump in with.
We'll have to put him back because I have like millions.
Oh, absolutely. You are always welcome on
the show. I have so many questions. I just want to leave questions.
Going back to your book, you talked about cultures in opposition and that two cultures can't coexist in the same home. Why not?
Because culture is a living organism that fights for its liberty and its dominance. So what happens is that when you put two cultures within a home, one is going to take the dominant position and one is going to take the recessive. And the recessive is obviously going to resent the dominant for being dominant, and you'll have cultural clash. So what should happen is that when you have people of divergent cultures coming into the same space, they should aim and sit down at the table and work together to create a homogenous culture between the two of them, which may be something completely new and synthesized that works just for their family. That's the quick answer.
About that, if you would be kind enough to come back to our show, we can talk more about that, because my late husband was from Pakistan and Muslim, and obviously I'm a pagan priestess, and we respected each other up until the day he died. So I was just curious about that. But I know we're running short, so I'm going to go ahead and let Priestess Star ask her question.
Okay. I just wanted to ask a quick question, because I would love to have Priestess Yvette and Priestess Shari ask theirs. I just wanted to ask, you mentioned that, or rather you stated in your book, that life partners should be selected with shrewdness and legitimacy based research. How should people research a potential mate?
It depends. It's different for male or for female. But just a quick answer, what you want to do is research your surroundings. Look at the type of people that they find themselves around, especially listen to the visions that they have for their life. And you want to ask them and find out what steps have they taken to manifest and fulfill those visions. You certainly want to look at the relationships that they have with their family, and you want to look at familial history. You know, if certain things run in the family, don't make the automatic assumption that it's not also in the individual who you're speaking to. And there are many other factors into it. But I would say that initially I wouldn't, you can use things like numerology and astrology, but I wouldn't completely depend on that at all. One of the greatest things you could do is communicate. And really, for women have to learn to listen with their eyes. Don't listen with your ears, because we're really good at making you hear what we want you to hear. But listen with your eyes. If we say we're about something, look for the evidence of it. Sure.
Priestess Star. Priestess Sherry, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
At the same time. Can you hear me all?
Yeah.
Sure.
I can hear.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes, so I had a question. So you say if you don't desire to be known, do not require anyone to make themselves known to you. So sometimes we have a tendency to hold back until we get to know someone. Do you think we should be open right away or hold back? Like, what is your opinion on that?
I would use again the model of the concentric circles. And a person does not need to witness or view your essence unless they've shown that they're credible to come closer to you. You know, so no, I certainly wouldn't open myself up. Your life shouldn't be an open book, especially because you're dealing with the dark arts. So your flow goes very deep, and not everyone is ready to get on that boat with you. You know, so no, let them work their way in through concentric rings. Sure, you're welcome.
Or are you on mute again?
This is on mute, unfortunately.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and ask her question then, since she might be on mute, or she might have dropped the call, because we still are in the post-shadow of the retrograde.
Sure.
So you suggest in your book that we should confer with another couple of elder status. What do you define as a couple of elder status? How would I know that someone is a couple of elder status? Are you basing it on how long they've been together, their age, or what are you basing that on?
Well, first thing, again, this is where we kind of tap into the energy of culture. Based on your culture, what constitutes an elder is going to be different. Here in the West, especially in America, I really would presuppose that if you're able to hold your consciousness up into your mid-30s, you've really reached elder status at that point, because there's such a there's such a strong onslaught. And this is the question that was asked earlier. All of the things that are put in our path and in our life to tear us away from what we actually are. If you're able to hold on to that, you're like a ninja. You're part of an elite force of people who were able to maintain their consciousness. So you've earned elder status a lot sooner. Now, in terms of what establishes what an elder couple is, then we're talking about an elder family. You know, one who's really coming to you with the tenets of family. Sometimes we run into the mistake of taking a lot of relationship advice from people who have never manifested a healthy relationship. And what they may say may sound good most time because it feeds our ego, but oftentimes what they're doing is speaking from a place of deficit. So again, it's a couple who stands for the healing and the goals of your said community. That would be an elder couple in your community. It has to be someone within your group, but someone who's about the healing and the advancement of your community. Those would be the ones who would be a little wiser to listen to.
Very, very awesome. Well, you know, we've only got a few minutes left. We've only got about 4 minutes left. So, Chief Yuya, first of all, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and staying with us for so long, which is an extra added pleasure. I appreciate that.
Sure.
What message would you like to leave our listeners with before we sign off?
Sure. Well, you know, I first want to give you my thanks for having me here. And I know we're dealing here with the energy of Rhonda, the energy of Star, the energy of Janine, the energy of Yvette, and the energy of Sherry. And that within itself is quintessential, because the word quintessential is rooted by the word quint, which means 5. So we have the 5 feminine energy here, and the quintessential energy references itself to the Akashic or the ethereal realm. So what I would leave with your listeners is, you know, you guys should keep listening to this show, because all things here that you're experiencing should be decoded. So why do you have 5 women in this space? And that number 5, is, especially when it relates to feminine energy, takes you to the science and the energy of ether, which is the breath of the gods. So pay attention to what they're saying. I bet you they have something for you which is much deeper than they might even know they're delivering to you. And if anyone wants to get in contact with me, take classes, I also have a show on Blog Talk Radio by the name of Enlightenment and Transformation. You can find the links on my website, enlightenmentandtransformation.com. Also, I run a school by the name of Sadulu House, which is SADULUHOUSE.com. And you can go there to sign up for classes and whatever, and get some free information as well. So
that is so awesome. I am so grateful to you for giving out that information as well. We're just very quickly going to close out our circle because we have 2 minutes left. Helen, farewell. Our lords and ladies of the elements and the directions, we so thank you for your kind service and release your energy back to its source. Blessed be, and thank you. And Chief, do you give online classes or do they have to be in person?
Both. I actually do both. We have an online school, but I also travel pretty extensively to students as well.
That's fabulous. All right, so with our last minute and a half, priestesses, you can go ahead and say your farewells. And again, Chief Yuya, it has been a true honor and a pleasure, and I hope that you will join us.
Oh, give thanks.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Priest Chief Yuya. I hope I got that right this time.
Yeah, it's cool.
But anyways, thank you, everyone.
So there you have it. That was the session and the time that I shared with the ladies of Goddess Radio. And of course, we were able to cover a lot of ground, and you know, as in normal and expected fashion, a lot of it ended up just speaking about how we relate to each other as men and women, which is a part of our magic. There's a lot of magic in there. So that is a necessary topic that is all too often is skipped over when you really start talking amongst other spiritual people. We kind of get into this homogenous, amorphous space where gender shouldn't or doesn't matter, but that's only a reaction to society's impression and imposition of what gender should be. So people go into that spiritual space to react in a certain way, and a lot of times their reaction is to try to neutralize gender, which you can't. So it was good that we were able to have that discussion about men and women within the same context of our own spirituality and how we individually function and facilitate the liveliness of our own homesteads. So that was our Foundational Friday. Make sure November 16th, be there. Nicholas Bookstore, November 16th, for the workshop Shrine and Altar, and also to pick up a copy of the new book, Shrine and Altar, as well as the DVD, Shrine and Altar. You will be completely covered in your shrine and altar needs by time November 16th. So you want to make sure you make it out to Nicholas Bookstore. It will be an excellent workshop. For those of you who haven't RSVP'd as of yet, make sure you get the RSVPs in. Get those in. Let us know who's coming. And that way too, you know, one of the things about the RSVPs people kind of take lightly, but sometimes it could be a bit disruptive if you do an event and let's say 30 people RSVP. So, you know, you arrive at the event early, you're setting up your chairs and everything, and you get everything in place, and then 40 people come through the door, or 50 people come through the door. And then in the midst of the workshop, you got to go running looking for chairs, or, you know, sometimes as a facilitator, myself, I say, well, hold on, everybody. We got to pause for a second. Let's get some seating, and maybe you could move over. And ma'am, could you pick up your pocketbook off that seat? Yeah, we have a seat here. You know, and it just kind of turns into a bit of a mess. So it's valuable when you RSVP first, because then we know how many things. Sometimes I have handouts that I bring. I know how many I need to print out and things like that. So definitely put those RSVPs in. You can do that via the ANU Nation site. You can RSVP there. You can RSVP also on the meetup site if you're a part of our meetup group. But you can RSVP right there on anunation.org/events. If you go there, you'll be able to put your RSVP into the booking system. So we'll know who's going to be there. All right. Or at least how many will be there. All right. So thank you for listening up until this point. You know, I know this was a segment you're probably not used to me speaking for this long, but you know, whenever I do guest spots with people, they usually want to go a little longer. That show was actually supposed to be an hour, but it kind of swayed a little further, which was okay. You know, sometimes the spirit just drives you, you know, a little longer than what you anticipated, and you have to shift your schedule around. And, you know, anytime that men and women can get into a space and speak with each other in a way that's civil and that's constructive, you know, you don't usually always want to just cut that short. If possible, you want to give that your time and give that your energy. So I gave them a little bit extra and just have to shift some things in the scheduling. With that also, I want to let everybody know too that I will be traveling again down the East Coast towards the end of November, early December. If anyone wants a reading or any work done, you know the usual, reach out to me. You can reach out at questions@anunation.org, questions@anunation.org, or you can use any of the contact links that are on Sadulu House, Orisha Religion, ANU Nation, any of the sites that have the contact, even HaruAssaan.com, and let me know that you want to schedule some work. You can, and you'll have to still put it on the scheduler that we use, but you can just give us a heads up. But you will still be using the scheduler so we can get your time and your space with me on the calendar. And that's for readings, iboris or head cleanings, anything you need, any type of work you need, you know, where you want to have a face-to-face. I will be traveling all the way down the East Coast. Okay, so I'll be passing pretty much every state from New York, where I'm at, down all the way down to the tip. All right, so with that, thank you for listening, and I appreciate your time and your energy. All right, I will see you next time. Peace.